Tire Quote in Gen 2. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at how we use Tire Quote in Gen 2, not necessarily discuss the differences between Gen 1 and Gen 2. So we're going to start out with just looking at how do we add a tire using Tire Quote in Gen 2. Then we're going to go back and look at some of the additional functionality that we've built into Tire Quote in order to make it much more robust and more efficient as we go along. So I've got a work in progress ticket down here for David Clark in his 2008 Ford Escape. So while we're in the ticket, if we click on Tire Quote on the left-hand side, it's going to launch us out into the Tire Quote module. As we go out into the Tire Quote module, one of the big differences or changes with Gen 2 is as it launches Tire Quote, if we've got the vehicle resolved on the estimate or work in progress ticket we're starting from, it's going to immediately resolve the fitment. So again, in this case, I can see that there were 3 base sizes that would have applied. Actually, a couple of them are the same, but so 3 submodels, if you will. So I'll pick my 235/70/16. So again, I can get my tire fitment immediately as we launch into Tire Quote. When I hit search, what it's going to do is it's going to now search for tires. And what we're really looking, or what we're building towards, is what we'll term a Smart ECAT for tires. For those that are familiar with our Smart ECAT catalog that we use for primarily general repair, what it allows us to do is to go out and search multiple vendors for pricing availability as well as order parts directly. So what it's done in this case is, if you notice at the bottom, I've got L, and L stands for my local inventory. So on my shelf, I have 4 of these Cooper tires. So I was going to sell those to the customer. It also, at the same time, searched both Carroll Tire and ATD. Those are the 2 current suppliers that we can integrate into Tire Quote. If I clicked on either, CT shows me what Carroll Tire has available. There's none on my shelf. However, 7 of those Eldorados at my local Carroll Tire warehouse. And or if I'm using the American Tire distributors, I can click on ATD. And again, same concept. I'm not stocking these generals, but there are 17 of them available at my local ATD warehouse. Now, before we get too deep into the screens, the differences, the functionality therein, I want to start out with just the basic, let's add this tire onto a ticket. So I've got 4 of these on my shelf. These are the ones that I want to quote for my customer. So I just want to add them onto my ticket. What you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, there's a box here that says posting options. It says tire mount and balance. What that is that's the current package that we've got selected. Again, for those of you that are familiar with Gen 1, there were buttons across the bottom of Gen 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And depending on which button you clicked, that was the quantity of tire that it would add, and it would only use just a singular tire package for each. With Gen 2, we've given you the ability to add in additional tire packages. So again, if you wanted to vary the price, you wanted to vary the time you're giving the technician, have different verbiage associated, have different parts kits associated, you can have up to 4 different packages that we can use. My default is just my standard tire mount and balance, so that's the one that it comes up with as we start. And then over here where it says quantity, I just tell it that this is the number of tires that I want to add onto this transaction. So again, no more 1, 2, 3, and 4 buttons, but now I just define the quantity. In this case, I'd like 4. So that's what I'm going to add onto my transaction. In the lower right-hand corner, I've got add, and I've got exit, and then I've got grayed out currently, post, and exit. If I click on add, it adds those tires into my shopping cart. The concept here is I may want to put 2, 3, 4 sets of tires onto an estimate, but I can give the customer an estimate or maybe a good, better, best scenario. So if I wanted to go back and add a second one, all I would do is just select it, continue to click on add, and then when I'm ready to get back over to my transaction, I'll click on post/exit. It's going to take me back over to my ticket, but before it does, a configurable option with Gen 2 is whether or not the system will ask if we'd like to auto post an alignment. So in my case, I've got it configured to ask me as I post the tires back to the ticket, if I would like to include that alignment. I'm going to say yes to that question just so we can see the behavior as it comes across. In this case, we've got our tire mount and balance. Yeah, I brought my tire over, and again, this not really different or new, but we've got our fees if there are any associated. I've got a generic rebuild kit that we're bringing over. I also offer a road hazard warranty, so I've got that included, and then also my 4-wheel alignment. So again, on its face, or its most basic, we go out to Tire Quote, we resolve the size, we pick the tire, select the quantity, and then post and exit to add it back over to the ticket. So again, just fairly straightforward if I'm just looking to add a tire onto a ticket. Now I'm going to go back out to Tire Quote, we'll resolve to the same tire size to start talking about some of the different facets or features of tire quotes that we can use. We want to get a little bit deeper than just, hey, I just want to find a tire and dump it back onto a ticket. I'll select that same 235/70/16, go ahead and let it do the search. And then again, what it's going to show me is that I've got in my local inventory and or Carroll Tire and ATD as my connection. So we'll give it just a second or two to go ahead and finish its search. So what you'll notice now is it didn't find that one in my local inventory. The reason why was I had 4 of them. I've already added 4 of them onto a work in progress ticket. So those tires are now committed. Again, the concept of committed inventory, not new or unique with Gen 2. It's the same as it was with Gen 1. But once we've got a part on a work in progress ticket, then it assumes that as long as that part is not declined, that it's likely committed to that vehicle. So that's why it's skipped over. It says, I'm not going to show you your local inventory because there's nothing there. We don't have any on our shelf in theory. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to default to Carroll Tire. So if I have Carroll Tire, you'll notice at the bottom it's got 12 in parentheses and then 121.99 as Carroll Tire. That's just because that's what I've got currently highlighted, and that's how many of them they've got available. So that's where that parentheses comes from. I could go to ATD and I could see that there, as well as if I just wanted to see them together, I could click on Show All, and it would show me ATD and Carroll Tire together. As we look at our window, most of these columns are fairly straightforward. Here's my part number, my line code, what I have in my local inventory versus what my vendor has in their inventory. If I'm stocking tires and I've assigned a bin location to those tires, I'd see the location in this column here, so I know where to go look on the shelf as to where those things should be. My brand, my description, speed and load rating, UTQG, again, fairly straightforward as far as that's concerned. Here's my selling price for one tire. And then here's my package, which in my case includes the labor. It includes the tire fees, so my disposal and my state tire fee, and also a TPMS rebuild kit per tire. The last column is the most interesting one, or at least the one that has the most dynamic elements associated. You'll notice it says SC, and that's the column header. The way that this works is it's currently showing the cost. However, what it does is it puts in the front of it, here is the vendor. So Carroll Tire versus a little further down, there's one that would come from ATD. And then it embeds the cost into the value. The concept here would be, well, if a customer was looking at this with us, if we just had the cost value exposed, that'd be fairly easy for them to differentiate. However, when we embed that into a value that has some other strings around it, it's not as inherently obvious that that's exactly what we're looking at. So SC currently stands for show cost. I say currently because you'll notice there's SC, SM, DM, and then C. So C will turn on or off those parameters that go around that value. If I click down the C, then it says I'm going to strip out that ATD or CT prefix. I'm going to take the zeros off the front and the back, and here's your cost. So again, if I'm looking to just have a more visible look at the actual number itself, I can click on that C button, and it strips out that, or we'll call it, the coding that we put around it in order to try to make it a little bit more difficult to discern for a customer what might actually be being displayed as we go through. SC means show cost. SM means show margin. If I clicked on SM, then now it's telling me that this is the margin per tire. And what you're going to notice is that's the default sort, is by which one is at the highest margin as we go through. DM stands for dollar margin. So don't show me the percentage, show me exactly how many dollars I'm going to make on that tire. So show cost, show margin, or dollar margin are my 3 options. And depending on which, and regardless of which one I'm on, if I click on that C, then it puts those characters front and back in order to kind of hide what we're actually seeing. So again, there's my dollar margin, $43.32, my percent margin, 35.51%, and my cost, $78.67 as we go through. So again, the main screen, a lot more information relative to the tire, plus that dynamic last column that'll allow us to go through. If you click on Pop Sort, what Pop Sort will always do is it will go ahead and it will bring back the one that has the highest margin associated. So if I said, well, let's sort it by the price, and it changes my sort order, And if I told it, well, let's go back to what I called the pop sort. Again, the pop sort is based upon the margin, and it will show you low to high, which one is at the highest margin based on its currently calculated cost and sell. You'll notice that the price in here is just for a single tire. Up here to the top, I have another value where I can adjust by quantity, and you'll notice as I do, it's adjusting my selling prices. So again, it now says, well, the price for 4 of those, just for the tires themselves, would be $487.96 and $635.07, including mounting and balancing, taxes and fees, and all the rest. So out the door, $635.07 as we go along. So again, the tabs, or I call them links up here at the top, are going to go ahead and allow us to change the view and or find potentially the more appropriate tire option as we go along. Right now it's priced at my retail pricing. If I had more than one price book associated with my tires, I can go ahead and change that, really only applicable for my local inventory, where we would assign potentially up to 5 different price books to a particular tire as we go through. And if I just wanted to search for a particular size, not actually have the system resolve my fitment, I can come up here to where it says size, go ahead and have it do my search. I'm searching for my short tire size, just a 225/60/16, and each time I do the search, it's going to redo that look. It's going to look at my local inventory. It's going to look at Carroll Tire and ATD if I'm connected, which in my case I am. Again, I might tell it, let's show all of them. There's my Carroll Tires, there's my ATD, there's my locals. And again, if I said, well, show me the cheapest ones, those would be from Carroll Tire, my package 360/115 for those Solars 4XSs coming from Carroll Tire. So again, different ways that we can find the tires as we go through. There's one other button up here to at least make mention, and that's the advanced search button. If I said, well, you know what, I'm not looking just for a 225/60/16, I want to find a part number. I want to find a size, and in this case, I can drop down width, aspect, and rim in order to select from the available options. Same with if I said, well, I'd like to apply a parameter to search just for a particular speed or load rating, or based upon any of the elements included in the UTQG. So again, the advanced search gives us a lot more granularity where we can filter down, and as opposed to seeing 60, 70, 80 results from an ATD, let's say, let's just look for these specific results. One other nice thing here, if you notice, these are all links. If I click on that link, it tells me that, well, if you see a speed rating, and the speed rating is L, that indicates that it's a 75 mile per hour, 125 kilometer per hour. So each of these will tell you that this is the value when you're looking at that speed and load rating. So it gives us a little bit of a dictionary, if you will, for each of these terms as to what might be the applicable values that we can pick from, and or why we might pick one versus the other. So again, we've got our advanced search, which will allow us to go ahead and find a little bit more detail. Then again, I've got, in this case, a number of different tires from Carroll, a number of different tires from ATD as we go through. Now, as opposed to doing an advanced search, we could also go through and we could use our filter criteria. You notice there's this little icon over here. It looks like a funnel, and it's because we're going to funnel down the information. At least that's the way I'm selling it, but that's your icon. If I click on that icon there, what it does is it says, well, what parameters would you like to apply as a filter? So whether it's description, I'm going to go with my load index. I only want the ones with a 98 load index, or I only want the ones with a 97 load index. So I can select that. Maybe we also want the SL as the load range, and we're looking for ones that are, we'll say from 0 to, let's go ahead and set it to, how about $200? Then I click on Save. What it then does is it applies that filter criteria. So I have a smaller subset based upon what I've selected. So again, in this case, it's filtered out the ones that are that I've selected. And you'll notice up here in my top bar, here are my filter criteria that I've applied. If I wanted to remove any one of these, all I do is hit the little red X on the right-hand side, and it expands the search parameter again to go back and include the ones that were previously filtered out. So by hitting the X's on all those boxes, now I'm back to my full set of tires that I was looking at initially. So again, as you're looking to filter down based upon vehicle specific and or specific criteria of a tire, you can use those filter parameters. Again, but not extremely explicit in what it does, but very powerful in me being able to find the exact tire that I'm looking for, the one that should go on this particular vehicle. I'm going to skip over this top window in the upper left-hand corner, or at least the menu's over here, and then continue on to the right and then eventually down. What you'll notice is my vehicle selector. If I wanted to, I could go ahead as opposed to, I've done a custom search, but I wanted to go back and I wanted to go back to the previous searches I've done, and or I wanted to re-resolve the vehicle. So you know what, not a 2008 Ford Escape, I'd like to select a different vehicle. We could do that through that vehicle link there. To the right, it's just giving me some of the information about the tire. In this case, I've got my specifications, and then if I've got an integration to ATD, currently the images tab works with ATD only. It'll show me here's an actual image of the tire, and if I was to just go through and look at each one individually, it's querying out to ATD to show me here's the actual picture of the tire itself. So new with Gen 2.3 was the ability to find those images as we go along. So again, we got our tire information down in the lower right-hand corner. We've already talked about how we would add that. One more nuance to Tire Quote, and that's this little options link down in the lower right-hand corner. I'm going to click on options, and you're going to see two things change. The first one is in here where it says parts kits. Right now, my tire mount and balance job includes a road hazard warranty and the TPMS rebuild kit. So I said, you know what, in this case, we're not going to include the TPMS rebuild kit. When I uncheck that box, it will not add that if I posted these tires back to my transaction, as well as it'll adjust my price both for my package based on the fact that we're no longer charging for that element. So the first piece, when we click on the options button, is it adds this section here. The second is it adds this column in front of the tires with a checkbox. And I can check up to 3 separate boxes. And when I do, I get a button that says compare in the lower right-hand corner. Now that compare button shows up as long as I click on at least one, but it will not allow me to go through and click more than 3. You notice I tried to do number 4, and it says you can only select 3 tires for the tire comparison. I'll click on compare. Again, what we're building here is kind of a good, better, best sheet for the customer. So if I was to look down through the list here, the icons are not dynamic, meaning it will not pull the icons for the tire, but here's the different specs on each individual tires, as well as here's the price for the individual tire itself, plus my current package, as I've got it selected, for 4 tires, would be $357.93, and so on and so forth as we go along. So again, your ability to create that good, better, best presentation sheet to the customer. And then as we either exit out of here, or if I was to spool that to the printer, what will happen is it's going to ask me if I'd like to save this comparison as a quote. So before with Tire Quote, you could create a phone quote or an express estimate, and then in theory, that just sat there until we did something along with it. What you're going to do now is if I say save this comparison as a quote, when I answer yes to that question, it's going to go ahead and it's going to create that comparison sheet. And if I was to exit back out of Tire Quote, then what I have to do is get back out of my estimate. And then when I refresh my estimates window, there's that Tire Quote that we created for David Clark. And if I looked at it, I've got my tire mount and balance for the iMove, for the GR, and the Kingery in that. So we've added those onto a quote. So if we ever wanted to pull this back out of history, we could save it to David Clark. Again, if we decide we're going to actually sell one of these, we could go ahead and use this as our selling estimate. So anytime you print that comparison sheet, you'll get the opportunity to go ahead and create that quote for the customer immediately from in there. Works out real well if we're not in an estimate or a work in progress ticket. What I mean by that is if I clicked on Tire Quote and I'm not in any vehicle, it doesn't obviously have anything to resolve against. So it just wants me to put in a size. So if I put in the 225/60/16, went ahead and clicked on search. So now I've got my search size coming up. It's looking in my local inventory. It's looking at my Carroll Tire, my ATD, and eventually returning me my results on exactly what's available through my outside vendors. So I've got 4 of those in my ticket, or in my local inventory, I apologize. I could either use the options to create the compare sheet, and or Tire Quote will also just allow us to say, let's add, we'll make it 4, add, post, and exit, and then it'll ask me if I'd like to add that alignment, which we'll add in there. And then now it's added, or it's created a quote, even though I didn't start from an estimate. If I wanted to, I could convert that by using the convert button to either a full estimate and or repair order by assigning my customer information. But again, Tire Quote allows us to just create an estimate right from Tire Quote without having to start one before we go in. So again, a very easy way to get out there. One last piece as far as searching for and or finding tires is concerned. And so I'm going to pick on my friend Jackie Green with her 2012 Chevy Corvette, and then click on tire quote on the left-hand side. Similar concept as we've seen before. The only difference here is that Chevy Corvette has front and rear, or they have split fitment. Front and rear is a more accurate way to say that. So I'll select my front and I'll select my rear. And as I click on search, it's going to go through, it's going to do the same searches, except this time it has two different parameters to search for. So the front tire is one size, the rear tire is a second size. So it's querying my vendors for both at the same time. So this is where using the quantity and the add/post and exit button comes into play, because as it brings me back my results, what I can do is I could say, well, on the front, I want to add 2 of those. So I'll change my quantity to 2 and click on add. On the rear, I'd like to add 2 of those. So I'll change my quantity to 2, click on add, and then now when I hit post and exit, sure, we'll add the alignment on, but what you'll notice is there's my 2 front tires, there's my 2 rear tires. So it's brought both of those back over at the same time. So I don't have the split fitment, the need to go out and resolve the first one, put it back, go back and resolve the second one. We can do it all at one time. So, and it knows, or it's smart enough based upon the vehicle we've selected, whether or not split fitment would be applicable in this particular case. So as I'm going to get back or finish up my conversation about tire quote, I'm going to go back up and I'm going to open tire quote one more time. I'm going to hit cancel. I'm not necessarily looking to have it resolve my vehicle, at least at this point, because the last pieces to discuss are up here in this menu across the top. And those tire fitment, if I wanted to go out and just search, so that takes me back and allows me to search my tire information download. Now this functionality exists on Gen 1, carried forward to Gen 2. No different in its functionality, but what the tire download allows us to do is, if we got a price file for tires from a vendor, this is a way that we could import that information into AutoWriter en masse. If you notice, I had in my local inventory, if I really went and looked, I've got a couple thousand different tire numbers in my inventory. I did not sit there and hand key all of those values. They were imported using the tire information download. If you're interested in learning more information about that, send us an email at training@AutoWriter.com. We do have a standard format that we would be happy to provide to you to give to your supplier so that they can go ahead and create the file in the format that AutoWriter is expecting. To the right of that, we've got our TPMS. This is a link to ALLDATA Connect. So if you're using ALLDATA Connect through the ALLDATA integration, what this does is it does a keyword search for TPMS in ALLDATA. So if we're looking for those reset procedures and they're available in ALLDATA Connect, it'll take us out there and allow us to find those reset procedures. Suppliers would allow me to say, you know what, I want ATD to be my primary and not Carroll, and rank them as we go through. When I change that, it tells me that it has to refresh tire quote, simply because it's now looking at a different sequence. So again, if we had done a search parameter, it would redo my search with with ATD as the primary. Not many options to be seen. What we could do with the options is we could turn on a wildcard search. And what that would do is, if we were searching, let's say, for a part description, and we did a wildcard search, as opposed to just looking left justified. So we typed in Cooper, and if we typed in Cooper, it would only search for Cooper in the start of the string. If I do the wildcard search, then it searches it for anywhere in the description. So again, if searching for, again, description, probably the most applicable example, but if that's something that you're used to doing, then wildcard searches are probably a good thing to do. And then help is like any other help menu in AutoWriter. It takes us out to our docs.AutoWriter.com page as we go through. So again, that takes me to or through my examples or my webinar here on tire quote and Gen 2.